Lila and Tari were twins who lived in a small village surrounded by green fields and a calm river. The village was simple, and life there was quiet. Every day, the sisters would wake up with the sun, helping their mother fetch water from the river and working in their small garden. They did everything together. If one went to the market, the other went too. If one felt sad, the other would know and try to cheer her up. Everyone in the village knew them as inseparable, and everyone admired the bond they shared. Even though they looked exactly alike, Lila and Tari had different personalities. Lila was calm and thoughtful. She liked reading old stories and sitting under the big mango tree by their house, thinking about the world outside the village. Tari, on the other hand, was lively and outgoing. She loved dancing, singing, and making friends with everyone she met. Despite their differences, they understood each other perfectly, often finishing each other's sentences and laughing at the same jokes. Life in the village was simple, but the sisters were happy. They had enough food to eat, a small house that kept them dry during the rain, and a garden full of vegetables and flowers. Their parents were kind and hard-working, teaching them the value of honesty, respect, and love. The twins spent their days helping their mother, playing with the village children, and dreaming about their future. They often talked about who they wanted to marry and how they imagined their lives, but they never expected that one day, a stranger would change everything. One morning, as the sun rose behind the hills, a young man appeared in the village. His name was Daniel. He was tall, with kind eyes and a warm smile that seemed to make people feel comfortable. He wore simple clothes, but there was something about him that made him stand out. People in the village whispered among themselves, saying he must have come from a far place. He had a quiet confidence, and everyone was curious about him. Lila first noticed Daniel when she was walking near the river. She was collecting water in a small clay pot when she saw him talking to one of the village elders. She felt a strange flutter in her chest, something she had never felt before. Daniel's smile was gentle, and when he looked at her, it felt as if he could see her thoughts. She quickly turned away, embarrassed by her feelings, and tried to focus on filling her pot with water. Tari noticed him later that day when she was helping her mother in the garden. She saw him walking along the path, greeting everyone politely. His voice was calm and pleasant, and she found herself smiling without realizing it. Tari had always liked meeting new people, but there was something different about Daniel. He seemed kind, respectful, and easy to talk to. She told Lila about him when they met under the big mango tree that evening, not knowing that her sister had already noticed him too. The sisters laughed as they talked about the stranger. "He seems nice," Tari said. "I hope he stays in the village for a while." Lila nodded, her heart beating faster than usual. They did not know that their hearts were already tangled in a way that would soon cause confusion and worry. Daniel stayed in the village for a few days. He helped the elders repair the old bridge near the river and assisted in the fields when needed. The villagers quickly grew fond of him because he never complained and always offered a helping hand. He treated everyone with respect, and people began to admire him. Both Lila and Tari watched him closely, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness whenever he was near. As time passed, Daniel began to notice the twins. He found himself smiling when he saw Lila reading under the mango tree, her hair falling gently across her face. He enjoyed talking to Tari in the garden, laughing with her as she told stories about her friends and daily adventures. He could not understand why he felt drawn to both sisters in different ways. Lila was quiet and thoughtful, and she made him feel calm. Tari was lively and joyful, and she made him feel happy. He did not realize that this feeling would soon cause problems he could never have imagined. One afternoon, the sisters were sitting by the river, washing clothes and talking about their dreams. Lila spoke about wanting to see the world beyond the village, to learn new things and meet new people. Tari laughed and said she wanted to dance in big towns, meet many friends, and have exciting adventures. Neither of them mentioned Daniel, but both were thinking about him at the same time. The air was warm, and the river flowed gently beside them, carrying their laughter and thoughts downstream. Daniel approached the river slowly, carrying a small basket of fruits as a gift for the sisters. "Hello," he said softly, smiling. "I thought you might like some fruits from the market." Lila and Tari looked at each other, surprised and pleased by his gesture. Lila took the basket with a shy smile, while Tari grabbed a piece of mango and took a bite, laughing. They talked for hours that afternoon. Daniel listened to their stories, asked questions about their lives, and shared his own experiences from the places he had visited. Lila felt a calm happiness being near him, while Tari felt a spark of excitement and energy. Both sisters realized that they liked Daniel more than they had expected. The sun began to set, painting the sky orange and pink, and they had to return home. Even as they walked back, they could not stop thinking about him. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel continued to spend time in the village. He helped people, told stories, and made everyone smile. The sisters found themselves thinking about him constantly. Lila would imagine quiet walks with him under the mango tree, talking about books and dreams. Tari imagined dancing with him, laughing, and exploring the world together. They did not want to admit to each other that their feelings were growing stronger. One evening, as the village gathered for a small festival, Daniel was chosen to light the ceremonial fire. The twins watched him closely, their hearts beating fast. When he smiled at them, both felt a connection that was hard to describe. After weeks of spending time together, Daniel's feelings for the twins grew stronger. Every day, he found himself drawn to both Lila and Tari in different ways. Lila was gentle and thoughtful, always calm and kind. Tari was lively and full of energy, always making him laugh and feel alive. Daniel did not know that he was falling for both sisters, and he did not realize how complicated his feelings would become. He only knew that he wanted to be close to them, to care for them, and to share his life with someone he loved. One evening, after helping the villagers repair a small bridge, Daniel decided to speak to Lila. He had noticed the way her eyes lit up when she read under the mango tree and how she listened carefully when he told stories. He wanted to ask her to be with him, to promise that he would care for her forever. Lila, unaware of his plan, was sitting quietly by the river, dipping her feet into the cool water. "Lila," Daniel said softly, approaching her. She looked up and smiled shyly. "I have something important to ask you." Her heart beat faster, but she tried to act calm. Daniel took a deep breath, then knelt on one knee. "Lila, I have spent many days with you, and I have come to realize that my life feels better when you are near. Will you marry me?" Lila was surprised, her eyes widening. She had thought about Daniel often, but she never expected him to ask her first. Her mind raced, but her heart already knew the answer. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I will marry you." Daniel's face lit up with happiness. He gently took her hand, feeling joy he had never known before. Lila felt the same, thinking that this moment was the start of a beautiful future. Meanwhile, Tari had been watching from a distance, unsure if she should approach. She saw the joy on Lila's face and felt a strange mix of happiness and nervousness. She loved her sister dearly and did not want to ruin their bond, but she could not deny the feelings in her own heart. Later that evening, Tari decided to speak to Daniel herself. She waited until the village was quiet, then found him sitting under the big tree where he often rested. "Daniel," Tari said softly, trying to hide her nerves. He looked up, surprised and happy to see her. "I have something to tell you too," she said, her voice shaking slightly. Daniel listened as Tari spoke about her feelings. She explained how much she admired him, how she enjoyed his company, and how her heart felt full whenever he was near. Daniel's heart raced. He realized he had feelings for Tari too, but he did not know how to tell her without hurting Lila. After a long pause, Daniel took a deep breath. "Tari, I care about you deeply," he said honestly. "I want to be with you." Tari felt tears in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the happiness of hearing his words. "I will marry you too," she said softly, thinking that perhaps their love could all work out if handled carefully. Daniel smiled, feeling both joy and fear, because he knew he was stepping into a delicate situation. Over the next few days, Daniel spoke to each sister privately, promising love, respect, and care. Lila thought Daniel's attention to her alone meant that their future was secure. Tari believed the same. Neither twin knew that the other had already agreed to marry him. They both believed their bond as sisters was strong enough to survive anything. The village began to notice changes. Lila and Tari seemed happier than ever, often laughing and working alongside Daniel. Villagers commented on how lucky the twins were to have such a kind and gentle man interested in them. Daniel continued to help the village, repair homes, and assist the elders, which only increased everyone's admiration. He tried his best to show love to both sisters without causing jealousy, but he did not fully understand the complexity of the situation. the sisters started preparing for their weddings. They picked out clothes and decorations, imagining joyful celebrations with the whole village. Lila wanted a quiet ceremony under the mango tree, while Tari dreamed of dancing through the streets with music and laughter. Both sisters were excited, thinking they were each sharing a special bond with Daniel, and neither realized that their dreams were slowly starting to clash. As the days passed, Daniel spent time with each sister in different ways. He walked with Lila by the river, discussing her dreams and listening to her thoughts. With Tari, he danced in the fields, laughing and enjoying her energy. He tried to keep his feelings balanced, but he noticed that every moment spent with one sister made him miss the other. Daniel did not know how long he could manage this, but he hoped that love would guide him through the challenges ahead. One afternoon, the twins were sitting together, planning their wedding clothes and talking quietly. Lila spoke about the colors she wanted, the flowers, and the small details that would make the day special. Tari nodded, listening carefully, but her mind wandered to Daniel's smile and the joy she felt when he laughed with her. They laughed together, shared stories, and helped each other pick the best ideas, never realizing that both of their hearts were holding the same secret. Daniel watched them from a distance, feeling both happiness and worry. He loved the way Lila looked when she smiled and the way Tari's laughter filled the air. He wanted to be honest, but he feared breaking the bond between the sisters. He decided to continue showing love and care to both of them, believing that perhaps things could work out if handled carefully. Finally, the day came when Daniel decided to make the proposals official. He spoke to the village elders, asking for their blessing to marry Lila and Tari. The elders were surprised but trusted Daniel's character. They knew he was kind and helpful, and they agreed to support him. Daniel felt a mixture of relief and nervousness. He was about to enter a situation that could change everyone's lives forever. The evening before the weddings, Daniel sat with Lila and Tari separately. With Lila, he held her hand and whispered promises of love and care. She smiled and believed in their future together, thinking that nothing could ever separate them. With Tari, he did the same, sharing his dreams of happiness and life together. Tari felt her heart swell with joy, imagining a life filled with laughter, love, and adventure. That night, as the twins lay in their shared room, they both thought about Daniel. They felt excitement, happiness, and a small nervousness about the future. They did not speak about the other sister's feelings. Each believed that love would only make their bond stronger, and that nothing could harm the connection they shared as twins. The next morning, the village awoke to the news that Daniel would marry Lila and Tari. Villagers were surprised but supportive, praising Daniel's kindness and the sisters' beauty. The twins felt a mixture of pride and joy, imagining the celebrations that would follow. They believed their love for Daniel and their love for each other would create happiness for everyone. Days passed, and preparations continued. Lila and Tari picked out their wedding clothes, decorated their homes, and planned the ceremony together. They laughed, shared dreams, and imagined a joyful life with Daniel. Neither of them realized that their bond was about to face a test they had never expected. As the sun rose and set over the village, Daniel continued to work, talk, and spend time with both sisters. He felt happiness but also a quiet tension he could not explain. He knew that loving both Lila and Tari was not simple, but he hoped that honesty, care, and patience would guide them through. For now, Lila and Tari were both happy. They were in love, excited, and full of hope. They trusted Daniel and believed that their bond as sisters was unbreakable. They did not yet know that love, jealousy, and misunderstanding would soon challenge everything they held dear. And so, the twins and Daniel moved forward, full of hope, unaware that the decision to accept his love would lead to challenges, regrets, and lessons they had never imagined. For now, happiness filled their hearts, and the village seemed bright with promise and joy. After the weddings, Lila and Tari moved into Daniel's small house near the edge of the village. The house was cozy, with 2 rooms, a small kitchen, and a little garden outside. At first, everything seemed perfect. The sisters were happy to be with Daniel, and Daniel was happy to have both of them by his side. The mornings were filled with laughter, the afternoons with shared meals and stories, and the evenings with quiet conversations under the stars. For the first few weeks, life felt like a dream. Lila and Tari would talk about their days, Daniel would listen, and all 3 would laugh together. The village admired them, saying that such a union was rare and that love could indeed work in many forms. Lila felt joy in the calm moments she spent with Daniel, enjoying his gentle words and thoughtful attention. Tari felt excitement in the playful moments, dancing and laughing with him. They both believed that their bond as sisters was strong enough to handle this new arrangement. But soon, the reality of living together began to surface. Small differences in their personalities became more noticeable. Lila liked quiet mornings with a cup of tea and a book, while Tari preferred music and dancing. Sometimes, Tari's laughter and energy disturbed Lila's calm, and sometimes Lila's quiet presence made Tari feel lonely. Daniel tried to balance his attention, but it was not easy. When he comforted Lila, Tari felt ignored. When he played with Tari, Lila felt left out. One morning, Lila was sitting by the window, reading a story aloud. Tari entered the room, humming a cheerful tune. "Can you keep it down?" Lila asked gently, trying not to sound harsh. Tari frowned. "I was just singing. Why does it bother you so much?" Lila sighed. "I just like quiet sometimes." Tari crossed her arms, feeling hurt. Daniel, hearing the voices, stepped in. "Girls, please, don't fight," he said softly. "I just want us to be happy together." But the tension remained, and the small disagreement left both sisters feeling uneasy. As days passed, small disagreements became more frequent. Lila would notice Tari laughing with Daniel, feeling a small sting of jealousy. Tari would notice Daniel helping Lila with a chore, feeling the same jealousy. Neither wanted to admit it, thinking it was wrong to feel this way about their sister. They tried to hide it, but the feelings grew stronger each day. Daniel, although loving both, began to feel exhausted. He did not want to hurt either sister, but he realized he could not always divide his attention equally. Meal times became tense. If Daniel praised Lila for her cooking, Tari would feel unappreciated. If Daniel laughed at Tari's jokes, Lila would feel ignored. The small house, once filled with laughter, began to feel crowded and tense. Even the villagers noticed the change. Friends would visit and comment on the quiet moments and the subtle arguments. Everyone whispered gently, wondering if the happiness of the three could last. One afternoon, while tending the garden, Lila tried to speak with Daniel privately. "Daniel, I feel like, sometimes you pay more attention to Tari than to me," she said softly. Daniel felt a pang of guilt. "I don't mean to," he said. "I love both of you. I try to make everyone happy, but it's not easy." Lila nodded, understanding, but her heart still felt a small ache. Later, Tari spoke to Daniel with similar words. "I feel the same. Sometimes I think you like Lila more than me." Daniel held her hands gently. "I don't. I love you both. I am trying my best." But no matter how much he reassured them, the sisters could not stop feeling jealous and uncertain. The small fights began to grow. One evening, while preparing dinner, Lila accidentally spilled some water on the floor. Tari, already frustrated from an earlier misunderstanding, snapped. "You are so clumsy. Why do you always make mistakes?" Lila felt a sharp hurt. "I didn't mean to. You are overreacting." The voices rose, and Daniel rushed to calm them. "Enough. Stop it," he shouted, tired and frustrated. The three of them sat in silence, feeling the weight of anger and disappointment. Even simple tasks became challenging. Daniel would try to divide chores equally, but one sister would feel favored over the other. Lila would cook the meals, Tari would clean the house, but sometimes Daniel would praise one more than the other without meaning to. Small misunderstandings began to pile up, making everyone anxious. They all loved each other, but love alone was no longer enough to keep the peace. The tension affected their daily life. Lila would sometimes wake up early to avoid seeing Tari and Daniel together. Tari would leave the house to visit friends in the village to escape Lila's calm presence. Daniel felt torn, trying to keep both happy but finding himself exhausted by the constant need to manage feelings. Nights, which were once filled with gentle talks and laughter, now felt quiet and heavy. The sisters sometimes stared at the ceiling, thinking of Daniel and wishing for moments when jealousy and tension did not exist. Even their conversations became tricky. Lila would hesitate to speak her mind, fearing Tari would feel hurt. Tari would bite her tongue, afraid of upsetting Lila. Daniel noticed the change. "We can't keep going like this," he said one morning, frustrated and tired. "I want us all to be happy, but the fighting and jealousy are too much." Lila and Tari nodded silently, realizing he was right, but neither knew how to fix it. The village continued its daily life, but Daniel and the twins felt the strain. What once felt like joy now felt like a balancing act. Friends tried to offer advice, suggesting they spend time alone or talk openly about their feelings. But pride and fear kept them silent. Lila and Tari both thought they could manage, believing that their bond as sisters and their love for Daniel would overcome any problem. Daniel hoped the same, but deep down, he knew the strain was growing stronger every day. One rainy afternoon, the sisters argued over the laundry. Tari wanted to hang it outside, while Lila wanted to wait until the sun came out. Words were exchanged, voices were raised, and Daniel stepped in, frustrated. "Enough," he said, throwing his hands in the air. "I love both of you, but this fighting is making all of us miserable." Lila and Tari both looked down, feeling guilty but unable to control their emotions. That night, they went to bed in silence, the air between them heavy with tension. Even joyful moments became difficult. Celebrations in the village, visits from friends, or small festivals felt uncomfortable. Lila felt uncomfortable seeing Tari and Daniel laugh together. Tari felt upset when Daniel comforted Lila during small accidents or worries. The simple joy of living together was gone, replaced with careful steps, quiet jealousy, and silent worries. Despite the strain, moments of love still existed. Daniel would bring small gifts, make small gestures, and try to talk to each sister privately. Lila would smile at his words, Tari would laugh at his jokes, and sometimes, for a few minutes, peace returned. But these moments were brief, fleeting, and soon replaced by jealousy, misunderstandings, and worry. After months of living together, the tension in the house became impossible to hide. Lila and Tari tried to keep their jealousy and arguments private, but the small village was full of observant eyes. Friends, neighbors, and even children noticed that something was different. The laughter that once filled Daniel's home was now quieter, filled with pauses and careful glances. Even simple tasks like cooking or sweeping the floor became exercises in patience and restraint. One bright afternoon, the village held its annual harvest festival. People from surrounding areas came to celebrate. There was music, dancing, and a large feast in the open square. Daniel, Lila, and Tari were expected to attend together. The sisters had mixed feelings. Lila wanted to enjoy the festival quietly, while Tari looked forward to dancing and meeting new people. Both were uneasy because they knew that public eyes often noticed every small detail of their unusual marriage. As soon as they arrived, villagers greeted them warmly. Some whispered among themselves, curious about the twins who had married the same man. Daniel tried to focus on enjoying the festival, walking between the stalls and greeting friends. He noticed that Lila stayed close to him, her hand brushing against his arm occasionally. Tari, on the other hand, laughed loudly with the musicians, her energy drawing attention. Daniel felt pulled in two directions. He wanted to be with both sisters, but he realized that the public attention made everything more complicated. During the feast, a small misunderstanding sparked a large argument. Lila accidentally spilled some stew on Tari's dress. Tari, already tense from earlier moments when she felt ignored, snapped. "Why are you always so careless?" she shouted, her voice echoing across the square. Lila, shocked and embarrassed, stood up. "I didn't mean to. You are making a big deal out of nothing." Daniel stepped between them, trying to calm the situation. "Girls, stop it," he said firmly. "We are in front of everyone. Please calm down." But it was too late. Villagers had noticed the argument, and whispers spread quickly. Children stopped playing, elders looked on with concern, and friends exchanged worried glances. The sisters' voices grew louder as frustration and jealousy poured out. Lila accused Tari of always seeking attention, while Tari accused Lila of being controlling and cold. Daniel tried to mediate, holding their hands and speaking softly, but the embarrassment and anger were too strong to stop. Some villagers stepped closer, trying to help, but the situation quickly became a spectacle. People whispered about how unusual it was for one man to be married to two sisters, and how this arrangement might be failing. The sisters, overwhelmed with shame, began to cry. Lila covered her face with her hands, while Tari's shoulders shook with silent sobs. Daniel's heart ached as he realized that the secret of their shared love could no longer remain hidden. After the argument, Daniel walked away from the festival to clear his mind. He needed space to think about what had just happened. The whispers of the villagers followed him in his mind, and he felt the weight of responsibility for the unhappiness that had grown between the sisters. He loved them both deeply, but he knew that managing two hearts, each expecting his full attention, was more difficult than he had imagined. Meanwhile, Lila and Tari returned home in silence. The streets of the village seemed quieter than usual, but the whispers in their minds were loud. They felt shame for arguing in public and regret for allowing jealousy to control their actions. The sisters had always been proud of their bond, but now they realized that their love for Daniel had created cracks in the foundation of their relationship. They were no longer just sisters, they were rivals in love, even if they did not want to admit it. The next few days were filled with tension. Daniel became quieter and more distant. He no longer spent long hours with either sister, fearing that any moment of favoritism would cause further jealousy. Lila and Tari noticed the change immediately. They missed his attention but felt guilty for the public argument that had caused him to withdraw. They tried to speak to him, but the words seemed awkward, heavy with unspoken feelings. Even ordinary chores became complicated. Lila would try to prepare food carefully, hoping to please Daniel, but Tari would arrive with suggestions and corrections, causing irritation on both sides. Daniel would step in, trying to help, but his presence often made the sisters' emotions stronger. Each small task became a reminder of their failures to manage jealousy and maintain harmony. The villagers noticed the tension as well. Friends who had once visited often began to avoid the house, worried about being caught in uncomfortable situations. Children no longer played near the sisters freely, sensing the quiet anxiety that filled the home. Even the elders, who had once praised Daniel for his kindness and the twins for their bond, now whispered about the dangers of such an unusual arrangement. Lila, who had always been calm and patient, began to feel bitterness creeping into her thoughts. She thought about the times when Tari received more attention or made Daniel laugh in ways she could not. Tari, who had always been cheerful and lively, felt hurt when she noticed Lila's quiet moments with Daniel, moments that made her feel excluded. Both sisters were trapped in a cycle of jealousy and regret, unable to express their feelings without fear of causing further harm. Daniel, too, struggled. He spent long hours alone, thinking about how to fix the situation. He loved both sisters equally but felt powerless to make them happy at the same time. He worried that the public argument had damaged their trust in him and in each other. He had never intended for love to cause so much pain, and he wondered if their relationships could survive the strain. One afternoon, Daniel suggested that the sisters take time apart to reflect. "I think we need space," he said gently. "We all love each other, but we cannot be happy if jealousy keeps growing." Lila and Tari reluctantly agreed, knowing he was right but fearing the separation. For the first time, they experienced life without constant contact with each other or Daniel. The silence of the house felt heavy, and the emptiness of the days reminded them how much they had taken their bond for granted. During this time apart, the sisters reflected on the choices they had made. They realized that their desire for love had blinded them to the risks of sharing the same man. Lila thought about how she had believed her bond with Tari was strong enough to survive anything. Tari thought about how she had assumed that Daniel could love both equally without consequences. Both felt shame for allowing jealousy and pride to control their actions. Daniel, sitting alone in the garden, also reflected on his choices. He loved Lila for her calmness and thoughtfulness. He loved Tari for her energy and laughter. But he realized that love alone could not create harmony when human emotions were so complicated. He feared that his decision had caused irreparable damage to the sisters' bond and wondered if they could ever return to the happiness they once shared. The villagers continued to notice the changes. Some offered advice, telling the sisters to focus on their bond and not on competition. Others whispered that perhaps such a union was unnatural and bound to fail. The sisters felt the weight of these opinions, adding shame to the already heavy burden of regret. They had always been admired, but now they were judged and watched with concern. Weeks passed, and the distance between the sisters grew. Small arguments were replaced by silence, small smiles replaced by careful glances. Even when Daniel tried to bring them together, the memories of the public argument haunted them. The bond that had once seemed unbreakable was now fragile, strained by jealousy, shame, and the realization that love could hurt as much as it could bring joy. One evening, as the sun set over the village, the sisters sat on the porch in silence. Lila broke the quiet. "I never wanted this to happen," she whispered. Tari nodded, tears in her eyes. "Neither did I. I thought we could manage everything, but I was wrong." Daniel, standing nearby, felt a deep sadness. He wanted to comfort them but knew that words alone could not heal the damage. They all felt the weight of their choices, the consequences of love shared too freely, and the regret of actions that could not be undone. From that day, life changed in the village. Daniel became more distant, focusing on work and helping the community rather than spending long hours with the sisters. Lila and Tari avoided private conflicts but also avoided deep conversations, knowing that any moment of jealousy could reignite old tensions. The villagers whispered, observing the strange smiles and careful movements, realizing that the once happy household was now filled with quiet sorrow. Despite the distance and tension, the sisters still loved each other, and they still loved Daniel. But the public argument had exposed the truth. Love could not always be shared equally without consequences. Shame, regret, and jealousy had crept into their lives, and the bond they had once taken for granted was no longer secure. They had learned that emotions, when tangled with desire and pride, could be powerful and dangerous. Even in quiet moments, the memory of the public argument lingered. Lila would think of Tari's angry words and feel a small sting of guilt. Tari would remember Lila's tearful face and feel regret for letting anger take control. Daniel would recall the villagers' whispers and feel the heavy weight of responsibility. Together, they realized that happiness was not as simple as love alone. It required patience, understanding, and sometimes sacrifice that they had not been prepared for. And so, the house that once rang with laughter now held a quiet sadness. The sisters' bond, though still present, had been shaken. Daniel's love, though genuine, could not erase the mistakes of the past. Life continued, but with caution, regret, and the lingering question of whether love shared too freely could ever be balanced again. After months of tension and quiet arguments, Daniel realized that staying in the village was no longer helping anyone. He loved Lila and Tari deeply, but the jealousy, misunderstandings, and constant worry had created a heavy weight in their home. No matter how hard he tried, he could not make both sisters completely happy. The once joyful house had become quiet, and the laughter that used to fill every corner had disappeared. Daniel knew that leaving might be the only way to give them peace and help the sisters rebuild their bond. One morning, as the sun rose gently over the village, Daniel spoke to the twins. His voice was calm but heavy with emotion. "Lila, Tari, I have loved you both, but I see now that my presence has caused more pain than happiness. I think it is best for me to leave for a while, so you can have time to heal and find peace." Lila and Tari looked at him in shock, their hearts aching at the thought of losing him. They had loved him, dreamed of a life with him, and imagined happiness together, but deep down, they knew he was right. I understand," Lila whispered, tears filling her eyes. Tari nodded silently, unable to speak. The sisters hugged Daniel tightly, feeling the finality of the moment. It was the first time in months that they held each other without jealousy or tension, only a quiet sadness that came from realizing how much they had lost. Daniel smiled softly, feeling pain but also hope that this decision would bring healing. Daniel packed his few belongings and left the village quietly, without fanfare. Villagers watched from a distance, whispering among themselves. Some were sad, some were curious, and some wondered if the sisters could survive the situation without him. The twins watched him leave, holding each other's hands and feeling the emptiness left behind. For the first time in months, the house felt quiet, but the quiet was different. It was calm, not tense. At first, Lila and Tari struggled with the emptiness. They missed Daniel's laughter, his stories, and the small gestures of love he had shown. The house felt large and quiet, and sometimes they would walk around, remembering the days when they had shared it with him. Meals were eaten in silence, chores were done slowly, and even the garden seemed less bright without his presence. Both sisters felt sadness, but they also felt relief that the constant tension and jealousy were gone. Slowly, the sisters began to talk again. They sat together under the mango tree, sharing their thoughts and feelings openly for the first time in months. Lila spoke about the pain of jealousy and the regret of allowing it to grow. Tari admitted that she had felt the same, and both sisters realized that their bond had been tested in ways they had never imagined. They apologized to each other for harsh words, small arguments, and moments when pride had gotten in the way of love and understanding. "I thought love for him was everything," Lila said softly, "but I see now that it almost destroyed us." Tari nodded, tears in her eyes. "I was so focused on Daniel that I forgot how important our bond is. You are my sister, my other half, and nothing should come between us." The sisters hugged, feeling the warmth of their shared love and realizing that their relationship was more valuable than anything else. Days turned into weeks, and Lila and Tari began to rebuild their lives. They worked together in the garden, prepared meals for their parents, and helped other villagers. Slowly, laughter returned to their home. It was quiet at first, small moments of smiles and shared stories, but it grew stronger over time. The sisters remembered the lessons they had learned, understanding that love could be complicated and sometimes even dangerous if it was not balanced with respect, understanding, and patience. Lila and Tari also spoke about the future. They decided that they would never allow desire, jealousy, or rivalry to harm their bond again. They made a promise to each other that sisterhood would always come first, and no man, or any other distraction, would ever come between them. This promise brought them a sense of peace they had not felt in months. The village watched as the twins returned to their old selves. People noticed their calm demeanor, their laughter, and the way they worked together harmoniously. Villagers whispered that the sisters had learned something important, that family and trust were more valuable than love for one person. Friends admired their strength, and even elders nodded in approval, seeing that the twins had grown wiser through hardship. Lila and Tari also reflected on Daniel's part in the story. They remembered his kindness, his love, and the happiness he had brought them, but they also understood that even good intentions could cause pain. They forgave him for leaving, understanding that it had been the right choice for everyone involved. Daniel had loved them, but love alone could not fix the problems that had grown over time. Their respect and gratitude for him remained, but it was now balanced with clarity and acceptance. As months passed, the twins continued to thrive. They helped each other, laughed together, and shared stories under the mango tree. The quiet house became a place of peace, filled with simple joys and small victories. Lila would read stories aloud while Tari hummed softly nearby. They would cook together, decorate the house, and help villagers with tasks, always side by side. Their bond, once shaken, had been strengthened by the lessons of the past. Sometimes, they would think of Daniel, remembering him fondly. They smiled at the memories of laughter, shared walks, and quiet conversations. But these memories no longer brought tension or jealousy. Instead, they reminded the sisters of the lessons they had learned, that love could be beautiful but complicated, and that no one should forget the value of family, trust, and mutual respect. The twins also shared their story with younger villagers, speaking quietly about the importance of patience, understanding, and the strength of family bonds. Children would listen with wide eyes, learning from the sisters' experiences. Lila and Tari spoke about how jealousy and desire could cloud judgment and how important it was to communicate openly and honestly. Their story became a lesson for the village, a reminder that love should not destroy what is most valuable. Over time, the sisters' lives became peaceful. They continued to work, laugh, and enjoy simple pleasures. They still dreamed of the future, but their dreams were now rooted in their bond as sisters, not in the hope of love from one man. Lila sometimes looked at the river, thinking of quiet walks she had taken with Daniel. Tari sometimes danced alone in the field, remembering his laughter. But these thoughts no longer carried pain or jealousy, only a gentle reminder of lessons learned. The village itself seemed calmer as well. The whispers of judgment faded, replaced by admiration for the twins' strength and wisdom. Friends visited often, and the elders smiled, seeing that Lila and Tari had grown through hardship and regained their harmony. Life moved forward, filled with simple joys, shared work, and the quiet peace that comes from knowing one has learned from mistakes. Lila and Tari spent many evenings under the stars, talking about dreams and hopes for the future. They promised to always protect their bond and never allow jealousy, desire, or rivalry to harm them again. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, reflecting the clarity and peace the twins had found. They laughed quietly, remembering small moments of joy, and sometimes shared gentle tears, knowing they had come through a difficult journey together. Their house became a symbol of resilience and understanding. The walls, once silent witnesses to jealousy and tension, now echoed with laughter, warmth, and love. Not romantic love, but the enduring love of sisters who had faced hardship and emerged stronger. The garden bloomed with flowers and vegetables, a reflection of the care and attention they put into their lives and into each other. Time passed, and Lila and Tari grew closer than ever. They supported each other in every endeavor, shared stories with the younger villagers, and continued to learn from their experiences. Their love for Daniel became a quiet memory, a chapter in their lives that had taught them more about themselves and each other. They understood that some love is meant to teach, not to last forever. The sisters often spoke quietly to each other in the evenings. "I am glad we are together again," Lila said softly. Tari smiled and nodded. "We almost lost what was most important," she replied. "We cannot let that happen again." They held hands, feeling the strength of their bond, the love that had endured despite hardship, and the knowledge that they had learned a lesson they would carry for the rest of their lives. Years later, when villagers spoke of Lila and Tari, they spoke with admiration. The twins had survived trials of jealousy, desire, and heartbreak. They had learned the hard way that family and trust were more important than romantic love. Their story became a lesson for everyone, that true love is not always about romance, but about care, understanding, and the bonds that last a lifetime. Lila and Tari lived the rest of their lives side by side. They worked together, laughed together, and faced life's challenges together. Their hearts were full, not just with memories of past love, but with the strength and joy that comes from enduring hardship and protecting what truly matters. They had learned the ultimate lesson, that their sisterhood was stronger than any desire, deeper than any love, and unbreakable no matter what life brought. And so, the twins lived on in peace and happiness, never forgetting the lessons of jealousy, regret, and love. They had learned to cherish what mattered most, and their bond, once tested, had become stronger than ever. In the quiet village, by the river and under the mango tree, their story became a symbol of wisdom, love, and the enduring power of family. The end.